Jim Bunning has been holding up unemployment extension for quite some time now, since the end of last week. He's the Republican senator from Kentucky. But it's not just the unemployment benefits extension. There are other couple of factors. First of all, the transportation funds are being held up. 2,000 workers have already been furloughed from the transportation department, I should say. And a lot of the transportation projects are now at a dead stop because Bunning holding up an extension of all of this to get it to the point where they pass a new jobs bill where it gets extended over a longer period of time. And then there's one other thing that he's holding up. Doctors are now going to have to absorb a 21% cut in their Medicare reimbursements. Now, doctors are a huge Republican constituency, so they're not going to be too happy about that. And it's getting a lot of negative attention, and Bunning's yelling at ABC reporters, giving people the finger. He's telling people, if you don't like it, he told another senator, tough shit. So this isn't really playing well, and even some Republican senators are nervous about it. And in the beginning, he seemed like he was saying, hey, you know what, I'm doing this out of principle because we're adding $10 billion to the deficit without paying for it, and that's why I'm holding it up. Well, later we found out, well, not quite. He was actually holding it up because he liked the earlier version better that had all these tax cuts going to some of the largest corporations in America. So when you took away the corporate tax cuts, he didn't like that, and he wanted to go back to that. So it turns out he was doing this, as usual, for corporate America. But there's an extra fun element of hypocrisy that we find out about today. Well, it turns out that Jim Bunning did not mind extending unemployment benefits earlier when we had a Republican president. Here is what he said about extending unemployment in 2003. He said, quote, "The 108th Congress is off to a solid start. This is hopeful news for our most needy families in Kentucky. By approving this legislation, we will help those folks who are currently without work continue to make ends meet until they can find new employment." And then his press release bragged that the passage of this legislation means that there will be no lapse in assistance for the nearly 10,000 Kentuckians who have filed claims so far for extended benefits. So back when we had a Republican president, extending it was critical and important to make sure that the needy families of Kentucky got that money. Well, you might say, hey, well, Cenk, you know, this is a different issue because back during the Republican time, they paid for everything, right? I mean, it's not like they were going to add to the deficit. Well, if you said that, you ain't paying any attention at all. Okay. Now, there's a whole host of numbers from the Congressional Budget Office, but I'm going to take the most conservative one, okay? The smallest one, just to be as fair as we could possibly be. According to the CBO, that unemployment extension back in 2003, over a 10-year period, so it's apples to apples, this was the $10 billion now is also over a 10-year period, would add $6.3 billion to the deficit. That is the net budgetary impact, they say. So when Bush was adding $6.3 billion to the deficit in an economic crisis that wasn't nearly as bad as today, Jim Bunning's totally fine with it. The needy families of Kentucky need it, man. So yeah, pile on debt. Who cares? Who cares? It's Republicans in charge. When the Democrats are in charge, look at that. Jim Bunning, all of a sudden, the deficit. Oh my God, I care so much about the deficit. No, I can't do it. I'm going to hold it up for everybody. And of course, then you find out it ain't got nothing to do with the deficit. It has to do with the corporate tax cuts, which, by the way, would then lead to a bigger deficit. Their hypocrisy, as usual, knows no bounds. Now, luckily, here they're also stupid, because now you got other Republicans who are going to step in and defend Jim Bunning, which is a terrible political idea. So have at it, Hoss. Here comes Senator Kyle, who's going to tell us, well, unemployment. It's kind of questionable to begin with. Clip number 6.
Now, what of the subject of unemployment extension, coverage extension, which we've just been debating? That doesn't create new jobs. In fact, if anything, continuing to pay people unemployment compensation is a disincentive for them to seek new work. I'm sure most of them would like work and probably have tried to seek it. But you can't argue that it's a job enhancer. If anything, as I said, it's a disincentive. And the same thing with the COBRA extension and the other extensions here. So it's not a jobs bill, and it's beyond me how it could be denominated as such.
Yeah, that's not playing well either. When you go tell unemployed people in the middle of this gigantic recession that your Wall Street banker friends that fund your campaign caused, well, I mean, come on. If I give you so much unemployment, that's going to create a disincentive for you to go get a real job. Now, look, I'm going to be super fair to Kyle here. Does having some unemployment benefits as a fallback create some disincentive for some people to go get a job maybe quicker, right? Yes, I think so, okay? And I say that partly based on my own experience. I collected unemployment after they sold the station that I worked for in Miami, right? Before I got my next job. Now, I was trying to get a job as a TV writer, right? So now, could I have gone and worked in construction or something? Yeah. Could I have gone and worked at the McDonald's? Yeah, I could have. And I didn't. I was trying to get the job that was in my field. So a guy like John Kyle could come up and say, oh, look at this lazy bum. He's sitting on unemployment. Could you live off of it? Hell no. Did it help me a little bit at the time? Yes. And eventually I did get that job. And so it worked relatively well. Okay. But again, I'm trying to be fair here and say, could it affect some people in that way? Yes. But John, as if I know the guy, Senator Kyle, okay, do you get that an enormous majority of the people on unemployment are trying to actually get a little bit of food and clothing and the essentials for their family while they desperately look for a new job? If you got a family, you think unemployment benefits are enough to live off of? I mean, but he's so disconnected from reality. He has no idea. I mean, unemployment benefits are not going to feed a family of 4 indefinitely. That's crazy. Nobody thinks that. We're trying to help a majority of the people get to the place they need to be, right? But so Kyle looking indifferent like that, at the very, very least, is terrible politics.